What's up everyone, this is ScherBR talking, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we'll be talking and making a full review of the SaGa Soul Kylin banner. This banner here brings only 3 units and has 1 farmer and 2 support units, that's right. And well, I don't think this banner has too much value because of having only 3 characters, but I will be discussing all the strong and weak points of these characters. First of all, none of these characters have future limited styles so far on JP, and this is yet another thing to take into consideration. SaGa Soul Banners are usually like that, bringing forgotten characters that the fanbase wants to see, but they are not so famous to get more than 1 style most of the time. Well, let's talk about Kylin first. This is the character that gives it the name to the banner. Well, Kylin is actually a martial arts unit that only uses intelligence for attacks. This is pretty unique. Creator, goddess are like that as well, so you know how it works. You ignore STR in your attacks, and this is good because he can actually use status distribution better than most older characters. He also ignores dexterity, that's why those 2 status are pretty low. He focuses only on agility, intelligence, and will. So the same 107% for all 3 of them. That is actually impressive. He can evade well, he can do damage, and he can sustain magical attacks. Has double arrows for intelligence, 1 arrow for agility. This is also very good because these are the status that matter the most when farming. His endurance is not that high, but it does not change too much. This character is used against magical bosses, so will matters more than endurance, although some bosses are hybrid and will attack you with many things. But at least on start, looking on the status of Kylin, it's very good. So now let's move on to passives. The first one is called Kylin Wisdom. On the end of a turn, he gets plenty of effects, even more on global. He'll recover his HP by around 150. You get 1 BP, so Kylin is a character with 4 BP per turn. Will also cleanse any type of status elements and also remove all the buffs that were applied to him. This is a combination of 2 different passives stacked. In the past, we only had characters with 2 of this. Now we have 4 different effects with Kylin. That's actually very good. Then the second one is called Kylin Space. On the start of a turn, and every turn, he has 25% chance to buff the party for 2 different status, intelligence and will. And when he buffs, it will be 20%. Well, this type of passive we've seen in the past. Well, we can even go and check characters like Barthélemy has it with his last mage style. In his case, he buffs agility and intelligence, 2 status that are mostly offensive and good for mages because of accuracy, but he was also used to help out in evasion strategies. Well, now we have Kylin that buffs intelligence and will. 1 is offensive, another 1 is defensive. We also got Dr. Nuzakan very recently, and he also has something similar, but he does it when he attacks. He buffs agility and intelligence. So intelligence is the same, but agility is different. You see, we are trading something. Nuzakan has 2 chances of triggering this when he uses a normal attack because of his chase capabilities, so he is superior to these 2 characters. But will is a very important status. Remember, this decreases the magical damage you receive, this decreases the chance of being inflicted with debuffs, and also status elements, something that, well, makes you lose boss fights. So it's good, but 25% means that on average you are getting 5% on total, since once every 4 turns. So it's not game breaking, it's just good to have as an extra. You can also compare Kylin to Snowy, and Snowy is meta. Well, because of different reasons. Snowy is pretty defensive, and he has 50% chance to buff will by 20. And this is actually much better because it's just focused on will. And sometimes you need right from the start of the fight, and he can also buff will with his circulating hail that is both offensive and defensive, and heals the party as well. So I guess that the closest comparison with Kylin is Snowy. And in the end, 50% chance to 21 status against 25% for 2 status with the same values. So the value is the same, but Kylin spreads it out with intelligence and will, while Snowy just focuses on will. And then the last passives are on defense 6, decreasing damage by 40%. You can even get a look on Snowy again, and he also has it. Iron Wall defense 6. But Snowy trades all those stacked passive from, well, cleansing, healing on the end of turn to get healing. On the start of a turn, he has a 25% chance to heal himself and a random ally that can even be himself. When using in battlefield, well, the value is pretty similar, at least when you look on the passives, but there's more into these two characters. Now, talking about skills, the first one is Gravity Hold. This one is a full AoE attack with 4 EP coast that deals blunt damage. It's only focused on intelligence, like I said, and has a chance to debuff agility by up to 15% on max rank. Now remember that his intelligence is actually very good. He will be debuffing enemies most of the time unless it's a very hard challenge and you need to buff him or debuff the enemy before you try to. Agility debuffs are actually pretty common these days, but, well, at least when you are using Kylin, you are using him against bosses that use magical attacks, because you are buffing Will, right? And the bosses will depend on both agility and intelligence to have accuracy for their attacks. So in this case, you are debuffing the accuracy and also the martial arts attacks from those bosses. It does make sense. Then a second skill is called Vapor Blast. For 7 EP, you get a single target attack with S power that hits for blunt and pierce. That's actually very good, covering 2 damage types. It's critical against flowing enemies, don't worry too much about this, it's just extra damage when it happens. And increases all surviving allies' intelligence and will by 25%. That's good because, like I said, well, you do want Will to fight against magical bosses to decrease the chance of being inflicted with status elements, debuffs, and also reduce damage. And he can even use this 2 times in a row when the fight starts, and then after that, once every 2 turns. Well, this type of buff is pretty unique actually. We have Matriarch, she can also buff status, well, but she either buff intelligence or buff will. With the first Matriarch, Peon of Victory will buff intelligence, but won't buff will. Matriarch number 3 will buff will, but buff other stuff. And then the other character is iToken, a very recent buffer that buffs intelligence, dexterity, and STR, but does not buff will, right? So it's pretty specific, only 2 status. The other characters buff more. But if you are using mages against a boss that uses magical attacks, it works well. So yeah, you already have the second passive that has a chance to buff intelligence and will, so he's actually pretty focused, but your squad will also have to follow the same. You have to use mages when using Kylin. I usually say you don't skip buffers because they are very unique type in this game, but buffing every 2 turns, intelligence and will is not the same thing as what you can do with a token, Matriarch, or even Owl's Daughter that carries all status buff. But it's actually probably the next close thing that we will have access for the time bank. Then we have the last attack called Reverse Gravity. For 10 BP we have a full AoE attack with a power that has a chance to debuff agility by 20%. It's just a good opener to use before Gravity Hold, has a higher debuff, but not just that, it also has a medium chance to inflict stun. This is more useful for fights in Ward Tower, when we get this type of events again, because it will take time for you to get very high intelligence. Medium chance to inflict stun is good, but it may not be enough against enemies with some type of resistance. Still allows you to go for full AoE cycles. You just open with Reverse Gravity and just go for Gravity Hold. I sadly need to compare Kylin to Liz. She can open with a full AoE debuff that also have a chance to stun, and then use a weaker one. And because she does get 4 BP a turn, they are pretty similar in this regard. Liz has damage passives, she can stack dexterity when she gets attacked, and will do much more damage on the long run, but does not offer support besides that. She's actually a character that works on solo, whereas your Kylin affects the squad. He will be buffing the squad, but when he wants to buff with his Vapor Blast, he will not be using Gravity Hold or Reverse Gravity. It's Vapor Blast normal attack, Vapor Blast again. So at least he does have a way to do single target damage. But remember that he does not have any type of damage passives, although even then he will still be able to do okay damage if you consider the status buff that he has access to. I guess I can also compare Kylin to the last version of Sarah, because she can also buff Will, but only Will. She buffs by 40%. The skill that she does that goes 6 BP, and she can also cleanse, but does not do damage. So you usually would not be using them together. I guess that it's either one type of strategy or the another one, although they do stack. I think that Kylin is better than Sarah, because, well, he actually does damage and buff intelligence, can make the fight shorter by increasing the damage of the squad too. I guess the last competition should be Halloween Princess White Rose, because she buffs everyone's will when she gets hit, and she even has Princess Pumping Party that also buffs will and endurance by 30%. Although she does not have any way to get BP, she has to use this every 3 turns after the start of the fight. So, well, you can still use them together if you are really needing, and I have to say that Kylin will help Princess White Rose as well. She needs higher intelligence to land her attacks. She misses many times when I'm playing against hard challenges, so I guess this is a special case where they work well together. So Kylin is a boss specialist. He will not contribute much when farming. His attacks are not bad per se, but they barely do damage since no damage passives. He can at least contribute by using either a single target psych with Vapor Blast or an AoE psych with Gravity Hold and Reverse Gravity. But all in all, he will only be used in very hard challenges, and in order to help you against mage bosses when you have a full mage party. People that just started the game may not get too much volley right off the bat with Kylin, because they will need to make a full squad, but veterans that miss it out on some of the characters I mentioned can use Kylin to replace some of them, and he will work in a way or another. But people with all of those I mentioned can skip Kylin just fine, even though he is a buffer. With all of this skill set and the good passives and status, I have to say that he deserves a very high SS grade in our tier list and will be very strong for hard content in the future. The only thing is that he only has this style, so no future so far, so even though he gets a high grade, he is easy to replace and does not offer anything really new to the table. So that's why he is easier to skip than some other characters. The next character is Cielmer, and just like Kylin, he's a martial arts unit that actually only uses intelligence for attacks and carries water and wind elements, I guess because one of his support skills, but this one does not do damage, so you don't even need to really craft an elemental weapon for Cielmer. Just like Kylin, he focuses on agility, intelligence, and will, but his status distribution is not as good, but also gets double arrows for intelligence, 1 arrow for agility. Endurance is pretty similar, the other status don't matter as much. So this character wants to fight against magical bosses and can even be used together with Kylin. They do complement each other well. Now for passives we have Revitalize 3. On the end of a turn he gets a 25% chance to recover his own HP by around 800 and also 3 points of BP. 25% is not so reliable, but they just combined 2 different passives and something that in long fights it's okay on average. The second passive is called Wit. On the start of a turn and every turn he has a 50% chance to buff all surviving allies intelligence by 20%. Well, 50%, 20% volley means that on average you get 10% intelligence buff every turn. That's not that bad, and I can say this is the offensive version of something we got in the past. Snowy has concentration, we talked about that in Kylin review, and it's will buff instead of intelligence. Will buff is more important because will helps with many different things, but if you just have your will buffer already, you can bring Cielmer to buff intelligence for mages that cannot self-buff. This can help a little. Then the last passive is called High Protect Tension. He decreases damage by 30%, and the damage that he inflicts will be increased by 20. So at least 1 damage passive. Not that it matters, he's also a character mostly used for boss fights. Well, High Protect Tension is not as good as Autumn Wall Defense, but decreasing damage by 30% should help you keeps Cielmer alive most of the time. Now the last character, Souji. What can I do? And you can see that by looking on the skills. The first one, called Wood Punch, is Blunt and Sun, okay, double element. With only 3 BP, you get C power with 18 mod, and will also buff him for 25% intelligence. So you can keep using this and you see an increase in damage. For only 3 BP, exactly, pretty good value. Then the second skill is called Spoil Wave. It's full support, does not do damage, and it will reduce all enemies' intelligence by 20%. The good thing is that 20% is higher than 15, and it's supportive. That means that it ignores the enemy will or even the agility. It will always land. So in very hard challenges where the enemy does too much damage and it's actually using magical attacks, Spoil Wave may help you and even reduce the chances of getting inflicted with status augments. You can either debuff the intelligence of the enemy or buff your own will. Any works, or you can even do both. So there's this type of utility in boss fights. Then the skill number 3 is called Tree Slant. For 8 PP, you get a single target attack that deals double S power, 50 mod, again, Blunt and Sun, very nice to have double elements. And it buffs all surviving allies' intelligence by 25%. Well, for farming, like I said, it does not really help. You can open at least with Tree Slant and then keep using Wood Punch for okay-ish damage. And if he attacks first, he can help the second character do more damage, because Tree Slant buff all surviving allies, but his damage output is not useful for farming. So you see, he has a full perfect single target cycle, will never need to use normal attacks, and buffs the party with the first attack and then keeps buffing himself or intelligence. And when he gets some revitalize to trigger, he will have enough BP to buff the party again instead of just buffing himself. Or you can just use Tree Slant, then normal attacks, and then get back to Tree Slant. I don't think this is a good cycle. You should be using his skills and ignore normals. So eventually he does good damage in boss fights. If you craft him a good weapon, he will serve you well. And because he buffs intelligence with passive and also with active skill, he will help those parties that carry characters that cannot do that by themselves. But as you see, there's something strange about Cielmer. His attacks are actually single target, but the support skill is full AoE. So I wish he had something else that could be used with lower BP cost, so that he didn't have to rely on normals when he acts as a debuffer. So Cielmer is not a bad character at all. He's actually pretty unique, but even more niche than Kylin, because he's only buffing intelligence, or debuffing that from the enemies. We can find many characters that can do similar, or are more focused on single thing, like buffing intelligence to the squad all the time, or debuffing intelligence of the enemies all the time, while also doing damage. Cielmer won't be able to do that, and after he debuffs on the start of the fight, he can even do this 2 times. After that, he has to skip 1 turn to be able to debuff intelligence again. Whereas if you are using a character that debuffs intelligence for 15%, like the latest version of Monica, for example, actually not the latest one, but this version here, she will have more intelligence debuffs stacked when compared to Cielmer in the long run, because she can keep using that Blurry Needles attack that it's only 3 BP, and she can use it all the time. The selling point of Cielmer is being able to debuff by ignoring agility and will, but that only matters in very, very, very specific situations. That's why Cielmer is also receiving a double S grade, will be kinda in the middle of the tier list, but is very easy to replace and skip because nothing that he offers is totally unique or game-changing. And he will be receiving a low double S grade in our tier list. And now the next character, Souji. What I can do? Souji was buffed in global, and I have to say that the changes are very impressive. He has 116% STR, that's actually very high. And 104% agility. He's not a fast attacker, but he does not need to be. His damage will be very high. But it's worth saying that he only has 1 LP. They made this character very easy to die because of the damage potential. But he is also very restricted when farming, so there's that. Look on his endurance, 53% is bad. His will, 58, super bad as well. But he does not need it. He's just there to clear waves. Don't think about using him for boss fights, unless a very special scenario where you can finish a boss in 2 turns. Well, again, STR and agility are his main focus, even arrows and extra points. And all the other status are average. Even his dexterity, only 72, could be higher, but it's good enough that at least when using it against normal enemies, we'll never miss. And just for comparison, Souji is on the top of the STR right now. There is also Alosis, Subir's Close, and Black, Rick, Final Emperor, Alan, so this is the list. Getting back to him, Souji has a very powerful passive called Sword of Misery. On the start of a round, he grants himself a morale up of 50% increase in damage that lasts for 2 turns, but also an attack boost of 30% increase for 2 turns and will also recover his BP. So just here, he gets 80% increase in damage and 1 BP. Yeah, that is why he starts with only 1 LP. This is amazing. There's no other passive in the game that can grant so much damage, and it's what makes him such a good farmer. Then the second passive is called Strengthened Energy 2. Attack increases by 10%, and he starts the fight with 12 VP to use some high powerful attacks. And the last is Fired Up 6 that increases damage by 30%. So what do we actually have here? 40 plus 80, totalizing 120% damage increase with Souji. The only character that gets so close is Rook. Rook has very high damage potential because of relying on having critical HP to do so. So unyielding tendency increases damage by a lot. But when you consider everything active, he gets 110% damage increase. There is other types of characters that can do almost as much damage, but they rely on critical attack, like this in Black here that needs to hit critical against humans to reach high potential. Or even a very strange character that is the latest version of Fairy. It has a lot and depends on being on full HP to do so. He does not need, but he can only activate this for 2 turns on the start of a round. But even then, it's enough to just finish waves. And like I said, maybe if you can use him to clear bosses in 2 turns, he will be able to help you a lot. It's impressive having such a high STR and such good passives. If you craft him a weapon with 90% or something, you see high values. Now, moving on to skills, the first one is called Moonslash. This one is a 4 BP attack with the power, and it's actually not that good, but this skill will be amplified in the future. This attack will eventually be buffed for C damage. With this coast, it's actually impressive. We can check here on Nauroma Saga. This attack is new on the global version, and only this Katarina and this version of Noah will be able to amplify it, but some other characters will come with that already amplified. Then skill number 2 is called Surging Slice. For 6 VP you get a single target attack with S power that has a low chance to inflict unconsciousness. Well, in order to instant kill, he relies on intelligence. His intelligence is pretty bad, so I guess this does not help him much. 6 VP attack with S power, in this case is 39 mod. It's what we find in many other units, like I said in the past. Rick has Heaven on Earth Plus, and the attack has the same power, so I guess it's just about the damage then. Because he starts with 12 and gets 1 BP per turn, he can actually use this many times in a row, but not that you really need this, since after 2 turns his power is actually pretty bad. There's a better attack to use and we'll talk about it later. Then skill number 3 is called Elegant Petals. For 12 VP you get a full AoE attack with slash and cold damage. And A power, 33 mod is actually very good. And after that he goes for Moon Slash, only keeping the slash attribute, losing on the cold one. So at least he opens with very big damage. With his A power and 33 mod and that many passives, he will be doing more damage than Rick on the start, and covering cold instead of heat, for example. He won't be doing as much damage as someone like Arthur, because Arthur, his cheese attack deals even more because of, well, adding another attack But the problem with his AoE cycle is that although he opens with very explosive damage, he would then use a weaker attack. Moonslash will not clear waves unless they have very low HP, even though it gets stronger in the future. Now, for inheritance, there are plenty of different things, because he shares inheritance with Jubei. They come from Romancing Saga 2, and you can just inherit stuff from them. Well, let's talk about Jubei Tower style from Spiral Corridor. You have Swallow Reversal, and you can amplify that. It becomes a triple S attack with critical against flowing enemies and grants defense down effect. Because his agility is super high, he will go first if you place him in many formations, especially Amazon Raid X, and it will increase the damage of the upcoming character by 15%. And he can use this 2 times in a row, so if there's only 2 waves and there's only 1 target, it will work very well. Or if you want to increase the damage on raids and you only want to last for 2 turns, this also works well. He also has an S style from Spiral, and this one can give him Blunt Strike. This has medium chance to paralyze and will be worth if you bring him to Remembrance battle against the Real Queen. You can use him to paralyze and then do AoE damage against the termites. It's only 2 BP, pretty easy to use. Another attack, it's Jolting Slash. This one is not strong right now, but it does bring lightning damage. When you look on JP, this will be eventually amplifiable for triple S damage with 72 modifier. This is gonna hurt, and hurt a lot. When you compare against Swallow Reversal, it's 72 mod against 59. Of course, the cost is much higher. You will only be able to use this once on the start of the round. And the last interesting inheritance comes from Waterfall Blade that you can find on his A style from the Platinum pool, so everyone has access to this easily. You just have to amplify to get an A power colon attack with slash and cold damage and 36 mod. That's right, it's just that high. And this one is very useful for the future. We do have plenty of column attackers coming up. We just got 2. We got Gustave. Gustave has this attack called Vertical Blade. Because this Gustave does not have that many damage passives, actually Souji using Waterfall Blade will do very similar damage to Gustave and even beating him by a small margin. And you can see that Gustave has double S power with 51 mod and even 8 BP as cost and only slash damage. That's how strong Souji can be, competing against a character with double S power attack. But Gustave is not the only column attacker. We also have the other Waterfall Blade users, and some of the best ones are Actor, with this version of him, also very high STR and agility, and he can even use 3 times, just like Souji. And another one is Katarina. It comes from her Summer Global X style, as you see, but it's better used either by the Welfare style, this one, because she can use it 3 times in a row, or the other one that is the most recent that can also use 3 times in a row because of getting 1 BP on start. And then, well, Souji beats them all, easily. The better thing about Waterfall Blade is being able to use it 3 times, while Gustave can only use his column attack 2 times. Most events are composed of only 2 waves. So if you got this Gustave, you are pretty sad. Well, Gustave does not exactly solo content. It may happen here and there, but he still may need help to clear waves. But you are reducing the number of characters that you bring for an event so that you can bring trainees. Dark is yet another powerful column attacker, and he deals pierce and shadow damage, so pretty different. The thing about Souji is that he's using an attack that's widely available, so even though he's strong and can even solo farm, this attack can be found somewhere else. You can use 2 characters with the same Waterfall Blade plus for same results, but Souji allows another character to be brought to train. He's not strong for boss fights, he's just a farmer with high damage potential. Although not as prime as some older characters, because he does not bring anything exactly new. His attacks can be found somewhere else, where people like Alosis has a different mechanic that can allow him to use B damage 2 times in a row. Some of the others he does not beat is Arthur, that gets a much better AoE cycle, Well, besides it, even Saruin will be better on doing AoE at least, or Bertrand. These characters will still be on the top of their lists because, well, they work better on two-wave scenarios, where he only do well on single target or column damage. So Souji is extremely powerful, you see big numbers when using him. If you are a new player without much power, Souji helps you. You don't even need a very strong weapon to start clearing waves without getting hit. But then for veterans, Souji may not offer as much because the attacks he has access to can be found in other characters as well, and he has no future style. But still, nonetheless, he deserves a very high double S grade as a farmer character in our tier list. Now, back to the banner image, is it worth summoning for? Well, actually, not so much. I have to explain why. First of all, Souji is strong, but he does not offer anything that we haven't seen before, either with cycles or either with the attacks. Kylin and Cielmer are good boss specialists, but again, nothing that they do are not done by any other character. So people with other styles can still keep doing their jobs without having to, well, summon for Kylin or Cielmer. All in all, they are side grades. Apart from Souji, that's a little of a power creep, you can live with all the styles without feeling you miss it out. And that's why it will receive only a bronze award. These characters are not bad, but do you really need them? That's on you. Only if you miss the characters I mentioned during the banner. For new accounts, I think that only summon if you want buffer like Kylin. Besides, for veterans, it can be found as an easy skip since there will be other characters in the future that can offer something similar, and they have multiple styles. These characters are the end of the line. There's nothing else, at least not now on JP. And one last thing, even if you decide to pull, you can wait 1 week because Halloween may come and there is Nawal's daughter, there is a version of Death, that is silver, characters with a lot of utility, and they may come pretty soon. But that's my opinion. What is yours? Please see here on the comment section. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe if you still haven't. If you want to support the channel, you can click the links on the description. I hope to see you soon in the next one. Bye.